Welcome to Networking Unleashed Building Profitable Connections, the show where better conversations lead to better opportunities. I'm your host, Michael Forman, and today we're talking about a topic many professionals quietly avoid: money. People will talk about marketing, strategy, branding, and growth all day long. But the moment a real financial conversation enters the room, the energy changes. And yet, business relationships, referrals, partnerships, and opportunities are all connected on how comfortable we are discussing value. My guest today believes there is no shame in earning a dollar. Money is simply a tool, and relationships you build affect your entire world: career, family, decisions, and future direction. We're diving into how your money mindset shapes your networking, why avoiding financial conversations limits opportunity, and how honest discussions about how value can actually strengthen trust. If you want clearer conversations, stronger relationships, and opportunities that make sense for your life, not just your calendar, you're in the right place. So let's dive into it. I'd like to welcome to the podcast Andrew. Andrew, you have a wealth, you have a background in all of this. I'm not going to even try to say what your background is, but could you just say hello to my audience and give us a little background of what you are and how you got here?
Thanks for inviting me on, Michael. It's great to be here. Huge fan of your show. Your audience is definitely in the right spot to learn. Just all the things that you try to bring to the table are just amazing. And yeah, welcome everyone. Great to be here. So yeah, I have an interesting start, but I accidentally became a financial advisor.
Okay.
I think that's probably the case with most entrepreneurs where you're going along, and there was this constant thread in my life where I was involved in biotech and pharmaceutical before this, and this core part of me was always I wanted to be a member of my community in the most helpful way possible. I wanted to network, I wanted to grow, I wanted to leave all these interactions of hopefully everyone being better off than when we started. In corporate America, it just came to pass where I would get going with a company and it just felt off, or I just felt like something wasn't quite right. And I was always constant looking for ways to learn, to grow, but I always felt that disconnect. And this couple of years ago, I had the opportunity. I sat down with myself and I said, okay, what do I want to learn for this year? And one of the things I wrote down was I wanted to learn more about personal finance. And I had a financial advisor at the time, but it's still a struggle for me. I didn't really still feel very comfortable with it. I didn't know what I was doing. And later that year, someone reached out to me and said, "Hey, have you ever thought about this as a career? We think that you'd be a really good fit." And I was like, "You saw my background, right? I was a biology major. It's all science. I didn't do money."
Right.
And the more we talked, the more they made it very attractive for me to come on just because I was going to have a more of a direct impact with the community. I am now a business owner, and that was all part of me growing this circle, this community around me that I wanted everyone to be better. And man, I didn't know anything about it. I didn't really know what I got myself into, but I dove in headfirst into the deep end. And I'm so grateful that I did that and that I have the support system around me that supported me in doing that. And it's just been amazing. I found where I want to be for the next 30 years.
Good. Good. It sounds like you found a home.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good. Okay, let me just dive right into the questions I prepared for you.
Sure.
Many professionals feel uncomfortable talking about money in conversations. Why does that hesitation actually hurt their networking more than they realize?
I think in any situation, when you're not comfortable with a given topic, body language communicates so much, tone communicates so much. And the other thing here that's underlying the surface is self-worth. And money is not, if it was anything like my childhood, We certainly had it, but I didn't know anything about it. And it was not polite to ask how much someone paid for a car. It wasn't polite to ask for how much someone paid for their dinner. You just didn't do it. And when you're going through all this and you're networking, you're having these conversations with people, I would argue whether you're talking about finance or not, like you have value to the conversation. You deserve to be there. There's equal stature between the two of you. And your time is as valuable as the next person's because we all have our different insights that we get to bring to a conversation. And so having that self-belief, having that self-confidence that, hey, you belong, it could open you up to all kinds of ideas. You start talking, the conversation flows, and all of a sudden maybe there's a business idea that pops up or someone that might be a good fit for them. So maybe you're not the right fit for a given role that's coming up, but someone else that you know is. Those kinds of things compound, and the more comfortable you are with yourself and the more at ease, I think those conversations just develop much more naturally.
Yeah, as you said, once you are confident in a person as yourself,
Mhm.
then really there's no telling what you can do. The confidence is your first level. And when you talked about introducing somebody to somebody else, that's called being a connector. You, as a connector in the community, say, look, this person has this problem and this person has the answer. You put the two of them together and you backed away. That's being a connector. That's being a true part of the community.
Yeah,
You say there's no shame in a dollar. How does a healthy view of money change the way people build and maintain relationships?
I would say I say there's no shame in a dollar because a lot of times when I talk to people for the first time in my role specifically, I hear a lot of I should have done this or I could have done that or my mom or my dad said I should get this done. Understand that what you've done in the past is what it is, but where you want to go, we can still impact. Someone in my kind of position, like I'm not a plumber, so if the pipes burst and the water's leaking out, not a lot we can do about it. That's a bummer, and I'll definitely sympathize with you. And we can try to do what we can, but there's not a lot that we can do. So this just goes back to you intrinsically are a 10. You're listening to this, you are a 10 out of 10. And when we have this view of money as a tool, as a lever to do other things, then we begin to understand that you are likely your biggest asset in your life. People think their house is their most expensive thing, or they have a piece of jewelry or their car is like their biggest asset. I would argue always it's your ability to work, your ability to connect people, your ability to add value to other people. That's your number one asset. Because if you're not able to do that, a lot of this other stuff doesn't happen. We don't get to go on vacation. We don't get to fix the roof. We don't get to go down retirement. So our ability to work and our ability to connect with other people and other humans, that's where I'd like to start with people. And that's where I say there's no shame in a dollar and that money is a tool because you are the weapon that we're trying to hone and to craft.
Absolutely. I could have said it better myself. If you look at money as a tool, as one of the tools in your belt, then you really can't go wrong. So you're a confident person, you have the money as a tool, and you use that tool. There's no telling what you can do. It's amazing. At what point should financial conversations naturally enter a relationship without making it feel transactional?
That's a great question. If you're listening to this and you're in your 20s, as much as it might suck to hear this, and yeah, I know you want to go to Europe and to Australia and all these wonderful, amazing places, do that, but start a habit. There are, you're probably seeing everyone out there is things are more expensive than ever, houses are more expensive than ever. Having that conversation earlier, time is your biggest asset when it comes to investing, saving, whatever you want to call it, right? Time wins always, right? It's just the nature of how the markets work. And so when you're having that conversation, certainly with an employer, future employer, and you say, hey, I'm thinking about coming to work here. This is where I want to be. Against this is what I'm seeing as value. That's the conversation I would have right away. If it's a conversation with friends, certainly it does seem to be the better, the more of a best friend that they are, the less you talk about money. I don't know why that seems to be a trend. I would say try to reverse that. But I think it's one of those situations I would encourage people, if you have questions about it and you trust the other person that you're talking to, you think that they've done well or you think they've done something that's interesting, ask them. Say, hey, I noticed you've done this. If this is uncomfortable for you, no worries, but I want to ask you, how did you do that? And I think maybe just that's the trick there is give them the chance to say no. Usually, if you give people the chance to say no, they'll never say no. But if you give them the chance to say no, it'll lower the barrier a little bit, and then you can back into that conversation.
Questions is always the root of all knowledge, right? You have to ask the questions in order to get the answer. And if you approach somebody, even on LinkedIn or something, and you say, you know what, I connected with you. That's great. I've been following you. I have just a couple of questions. Would you mind answering my questions or having a virtual cup of coffee or a cup of coffee?
Mm,
99.9% times out of 100, they'll say yes, because
yeah.
people are always willing to share with you, right?
Hmm.
They're always saying, look, they're coming to me, so I must know something. And but the other person's trying to learn. I always suggest making a connection, asking questions. If you're going to a networking event or a networking meeting, ask questions. It's so much more. Plus, the other person wants to give you their knowledge. You're not even trying to pull it, so that's okay.
Yeah. I
Um,
would say
okay,
on that note, be wary of some advice that you find online. I think, at least with terms of finances,
absolutely.
apply some healthy skepticism to it and understand or try to understand where that person might be coming from. Unfortunately, some of the reputation the financial industry is earned from a negative perspective. And I would say the more knowledgeable and the more licensed the person is, the less specific information they will provide online as a general rule of thumb. Because for someone like myself, if I told you all to go buy some sort of stock tomorrow and you did that and you lost money, you could actually sue me. So I'm not going to do that. And so when you're seeing things online where someone's giving tips, or unless you're very sure about their credentials, just be careful and apply some healthy skepticism to that kind of situation.
There's a line that I've always used. I trust the person. I trust, but verify.
Hmm.
I'll never take this type of conversation online because I don't know who I'm talking to.
Yeah.
And with networking, there's a mantra: know you, like you, trust you. They'll do business with you. And without
Hmm.
that last little piece of trust, they'll never do business with you. So, how am I going to trust you if I've only met you online?
Yeah.
It goes a long way. So, you really have to. I always trust, but I verify. That's my whole thing. Okay. How can someone be genuine in networking while still being clear about the business value they bring?
So that's a wonderful question. And for anyone that's been to a Chamber of Commerce meeting, you'll see both sides of that equation quickly, probably within the first 10 minutes. My favorite approach, and for when people approach me, start a conversation just with, hi, my name is, what brings you here? And from there, there's a lot of schools of thought out there between on how to build like what I guess we'll generally call a 30-second commercial. I love trying to get that whatever that is in your head, and I definitely practiced that for a second, trying to get that to 18 words or less. If you can communicate what you do, who you do it for, and how you do it in 18 words or less, that is going to have a better chance of sticking than a 2-minute monologue. Because I'm sure your listeners, you do all sorts of things and you can help people in all myriad different kinds of ways. Try to make it succinct so that you're memorable, that they can come back to you and you can develop that relationship over time. Don't try to get it all out at once.
I coach many professionals. And what the first thing I do is I say, okay, give me a 30-second speech. Okay. And we hone it down to 30 seconds. That's really what they want to say. All right, I've got it. Then I say, you know what? Break that down to 10 seconds.
Yeah.
They said, you can't do that. I just spent 10 seconds. So I break it down to 10 seconds. They said, how's that? I said, good. Now throw it out because now you focused in on exactly what you want to say.
Right.
And as it falls right in line with what you just said, the 18 words and be memorable and all these different things. But when you're standing in front of a Chamber of Commerce group, I go to a Chamber of Commerce meeting every week, and you
Hmm.
have 30 seconds to say something. If I have 5 things I want to sell, do I say about all 5? No, I pick one.
Yeah.
And the next week I'll pick something else. The next week I'll
Yeah.
pick something else. So I'm not trying to overload, but I'm
Hmm.
trying to make myself memorable. So you hit it right on the nail. You describe money as a tool. What does it actually help people to do inside relationships that they often overlook?
So the way I look at it is when I sit down with families or individuals and we talk about this, I want to create options and flexibility. And I want to say it again. So these options and the flexibility to do what you want on your time frame, not your environments. That to me is one of the best pieces of freedom that we can provide. You can argue freedom is the freedom to say yes or the freedom to say no, however you want to look at that. I want to be able to work with you to put you in a position to say, I can say yes or I can say no. It's my call. So when we do that, we're allowing you in your relationships to be more present. I work with all kinds of different people, and from clients at the beginning of the stages of investing all the way to the most sophisticated, no one ever says, wow, I was really thrilled. I got to swipe my credit card 3 times yesterday. That's not usually the story. The
Right.
story was I was in Italy with my family and we were watching the Olympics and we had a lot of fun. And we did this and that and the other thing and we got to see all this and I got to be there and I watched my son or my daughter experience another culture for the first time and it was a lot of fun. And I hone in on that because if you can get yourself to a point where we are allowing you to be more present, to show up in the relationships that you do have in your life, personal, professional, whatever. People, I don't think realize how much they think about money. They see price tags, they see gas, the signs for gas, how much a gallon of gas is on the side of the road all the time. But we're constantly bombarded by cost. We can set that aside and you hit the pillow every night knowing that you got to enjoy the day. You got to experience the fullest of those moments that day. That's the win. That's what the options, that's what the flexibility creates. And using money as a tool. And again, not having any shame. And yes, I've set some stuff aside, but now I'm able to do all this.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree 100 more than 100%. I can agree more than 100%. It wouldn't be worth anything. But you're absolutely right because I look at money as being comfortable, but it's not doesn't control my life. I look at everything else. I look at my wife, my kids, my everything, and I say, look, that's my wealth. The money's just a tool to get some things. And I
Right.
use the tool as a quiver. And
And,
that's really it.
and you do not have to be a multimillionaire for that to happen.
Absolutely. I
It,
agree.
it does not take, I'm willing to guess for most of you listening, for what you make now, for what you've earned, you're able to do more than you think you can with just some realignment and some focus. I think that's one of the fallacies of talking about finance too, is like everyone thinks that they need some amount of X dollars. Okay, but where does that come from? And then why is that the number? And let's break it down. Let's put some math behind it. You might be right, but you might be wrong. And that's where that conversation comes back in, where have that, put some math to it and figure out, are we living in the land of possibility, or are you putting yourself under constant stress that was unnecessary this whole time?
Absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more. Some people avoid discussing opportunities because they don't want to appear self interested. How do you balance service and business honestly?
I think that comes back to what's your why? What are your intentions to start with? Like, don't tell anyone, but I would do my job for free if I could. I think it's that important. And if I approach my job from an aspect of self-interest, it would come across like you would know. And I would end up having very transactional relationships with the people that I work with. And I think when you're looking at that, when if you're looking to hire a financial planner, or you're looking to hire a plumber, or you're looking at working for X company, or you're maybe going to go in a deal with someone to start a business, I think one of the most powerful questions that you can ask someone when you're trying to establish this level of trust and camaraderie is asking them, what are they most proud of? And if it's in the realm of a contractor or financial advisor, what are you most proud of? What's the thing that you help the family out the most with? Or if it's a job, why do you guys all show up every day? What are you proud of that you've accomplished as a group, as a company, as an individual? I think that's just a very hard question to fake. There's a lot of different ways to answer it. There's not a wrong answer necessarily, but you'll get a great picture into what that person thinks is important and how they think they show up to other people. And you can bounce that off your internal bullshit meter, as it were, and figure out like, hey, is this person for me? Are we vibing? Or that's a great
Yeah,
answer, but this isn't me.
absolutely. And it changes by the person, right? Because there are 1,000 financial advisors, but there is one type that is perfect for you, and the
Hmm.
rest of them don't. But if you find that one person, such as yourself, and if you find somebody likely to give you the right answers, they may not always be the answers you want to hear, but they're the right answers and you can work with that, then you won. It's a home
Right.
run. When someone thinks about their world as a whole, career, family, finances, community, how does that change who they choose to connect with?
I think that's a great question that builds on what we were just talking about. I think if you are able to look at your picture as a whole, I guess maybe it's like the question that sometimes we get to when I'm talking with families is like, what's really going to matter when you're old and gray, body doesn't quite work so well as it used to, and you take a look back on your life, and I guess something easy we can all relate to. Not everyone has been mad at someone else driving on the road.
Yeah,
Some take more than others. But everyone that's ever driven, I'm sure you listen, you've had at least one moment where like something happened on the road that was upsetting. How upset you get or how long you hang on to that, I like to try to put that in context against what is that gonna matter when you're saying your last goodbyes? Because if it doesn't, if that's not what's going to come up, if you're going to say thank you to everyone else, I love you, it was wonderful to spend a vacation with you in this whatever place. That's the holistic part of life that, I'd encourage you to take a look at because it's easy to get lost in the moment. It's a lot harder to think about the big picture. But I think through looking at the big picture, looking at your life holistically, there's a certain freedom to that because through that lens, now that driving incident doesn't matter. That other person may have been wrong, but it's,
Absolutely. The older I get, the more I look at life that way,
yeah,
because I can tell you how I would react in my 20s, in my 30s, in my 40s, in my 50s. I'm now in my 60s, and
yeah,
it's very different than the way I would act when I was in my 30s. Okay. I understand that completely. And unfortunately, people have to wait until their 60s or 50s to look at life that way.
yeah.
That the world would be a better place.
I try to encourage people to do that earlier. This isn't my quote, so I can't take credit for this personally, but I use this in conversations with early stage clients when we're first getting to know each other. Say, people only think other people die. And I let that sink in for a second. And I invite you to say that again in your head. People only think other people die. And you could extrapolate that to a whole number of different issues, but statistics, they're averages. That means there's someone on the front of it and someone on the back of it, and there's only one person on the middle of it. That's why I encourage people to try to use that lens and cycle through some of this because it actually is quite a liberating concept.
Yeah, you can also take that same thing and whether it's about illness or something else that always happens to somebody else, but when
Mhm.
it finally happens to you or someone you love, then all of a sudden your world comes crashing down and say, "What do I do? I need help," or something else like that, and you never realize that it can happen to you.
Yeah.
So you can
Yeah.
take that in a number of ways.
Yeah. There's a right now recently here a famous actor. He just passed. Right. He left behind his wife and four kids. And his wife, a Hollywood actor, you think, oh, he's rich, he's got everything all figured out. And he had to start a GoFundMe page, or the family did. They raised $1 million, probably a little bit on the back of him being famous. But I'm looking at that and I'm like, from my perspective as a financial professional, that GoFundMe page, I would love to put GoFundMe out of business if I could. Not
Well,
because they're doing a bad thing. I think they're doing a wonderful mission. I fully support what they're doing because it's a great community tool. I would love to save people the heartache of having to go through that process on top of having just lost a loved one, where they're already heartbroken to begin with.
absolutely, absolutely. How do strong relationships improve financial decision making, not just income?
That's a great one for those of you out there that are coupled up,
Yeah.
husband, wife. It's okay. I think this is where open communication goes. And obviously, I don't know your relationship, but it is okay to have a different answer. And I think allowing that the person to have a different answer for you from you, a different priority, they're probably pretty close. But I'll just say from like my perspective, I do what I do for a living. My wife is still a huge part of the major financial decisions that we make. Not because I'm right and she's wrong, but because we have sometimes different viewpoints on something. Oftentimes we find we actually are pretty aligned, but I think just allowing that space for her to have her answer and me to have my answer, it's not a fight if we both give each other the space to have a respective
It
opinion
sounds
on
like a
that.
good, healthy relationship. It does. But a lot of relationships aren't cut the same way. I too have that same relationship. And because there are times in my life where I made more money than she did, she made
Hmm.
more money than I did, and it
Hmm.
never really mattered.
Yeah.
We both had that type of relationship where we bounced it off each other's back, off each other, and said,
Mhm.
"What do you think?" and we came up with the right solution and we went for it.
Yeah.
Usually I was right, but that's beside the point. Okay. What signs a show? What signs show a relationship is mutually beneficial versus quietly one sided? What we just talked about.
Yeah. I would say if you can leave the conversation with a smile and the other person's also leaving with a smile,
Yeah.
you're in a good start. Obviously, there are good actors out there and there are bad actors. I've been fooled before, right? I thought I was gonna go to this networking thing in Scotland once. I was like 23 and I was really excited and I was like looking for all kinds of ways to get better. And this is one of those situations where it was like, go to Scotland, spend a week or 2 weeks or whatever it was, and then you'll come back and your business is going to explode and your professional life's going to go crazy and whatever. Wired them $10,000. And because I did that in my excitement, and I was like, okay, yeah, this will be worth it. I'll make this back in no time. And then I happened to listen to the person's podcast after that. And I could not believe the amount of unprofessionalism and it was a completely opposite image from the image that I was marketed. And I got all kinds of warning signs because I was still supposed to pay them more money to still yet go. That was just the down payment. Long story short, pulled out, hit the ripcord. I never got the money back. It was a very expensive lesson for a young 20s, whatever year old I was. It happens. I, that was definitely a one-sided relationship. They were quite dishonest about the whole thing. I had no real recourse for any of you that have lost that kind of money. Yes, it's a lot, but to go for a lawyer, by the time you get through it all, you're worse off anyways. So it wasn't fun. And
Yep.
so a little
It
trial and
sounded
error.
like, yep, it sounded like you learned a hard lesson,
Yeah,
right?
that wasn't fun. I wasn't proud of that
Yep.
one.
Yeah, no. But look, it made you a better person. It made you scrutinize anything like that even more. You'll look into something. I always give myself 24 hours. If something is too great or too good to believe, it
Hmm.
usually is. But if I get hold of a deal or something else like that, I'll say, look, I'll give you an answer, but it'll be tomorrow. And they usually say it's only good for the next hour. Obviously, it's not good for me then. And they hate when I say that, but and I do, and I check them out within the 24 hours, and either they're full of crap or they're all right.
Yeah.
And usually they're full of crap. So it works that way.
Yeah, I would say the rush tactics definitely should be an alarm bell generally,
Yeah,
right? If someone's
absolutely.
saying, oh, you have to do this now or whatever, just again, put your warning signs up, try to do a little bit more homework if you can. But if someone's really pushing you and you're not comfortable in anything, any kind of monetary transaction, job transaction, if someone says, oh, you have to take this now or we're going to go to the next candidate, you're not, again, I go back to you're a 10,
Yep,
right? You have value, you have a tremendous amount that you can offer to the world. If someone wants you that bad, they shouldn't be willing to dump you in an hour and go to the next person.
absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, let's bring this podcast full circle.
Sure.
If a listener wants both stronger relationships and healthier financial outcomes in the next 90 days, what's one networking behavior should they start immediately?
I think, you know, the easiest thing to probably do is it costs no money, and that's have an honest conversation with yourself, pull up your finances, and go through an inflow and outflow for your budget. That is can be a very eye-opening experience. If you do that with your spouse, be prepared for wherever that's going to go. You're probably going to surprise yourself, but I'd say that's an easy one. If you want more information, noshameinadollar.com. I invite anyone. I can continue this conversation in more detail and get more specific on stuff. But aside from going to noshameinadollar.com, I would just say, yeah, do the budget, have the conversation with yourself, with your spouse, and at the end of it, again, give yourself some grace. There's no right or wrong answer, but if at the end of it you're not comfortable with what that picture looks like, then something's got to change. And that should be something that you start to take some action on.
Absolutely. Andrew, this was great. Andrew, if somebody wanted to get hold of you, just either to pick your brain, to hire you, or just ask you some questions, what's the best way they can get hold of you?
The best way is to go to noshameinaDollar.com. I set that up. It's just the name and email address is all that would take, and we can start a conversation. Of course, LinkedIn, I'm on there as well, and my last name is Quebbemann, and that's the beauty of having it start with a Q. That's quite unique. I'm easy enough to find there, but yeah, like I said, I'm here to help. I'm here to be a member of the community and to help everyone's network. And if that's all you want to, and you just want to network a little bit, I'm happy to do that.
Fantastic. This conversation reminds us that networking isn't only about who you meet, it's about how openly and honestly you communicate value. When people are comfortable discussing goals, expectations, and opportunity, relationships become clearer and decisions become easier. If today's episode made you think of how you approach conversations about value, try one small step this week. Have one honest, respectful business conversation you may have been avoiding. You'll be surprised how often clarity strengthens trust. And if you found this helpful, make sure you like, follow, or subscribe to Networking Unleashed Building Profitable Connections so you keep getting practical insight on networking and communication. Also, share the episode with someone who would benefit from hearing it. If you would help improving how you communicate, build relationships, or position yourself in conversations, visit Forman.com to learn how I work with professionals, teams, and organizations. So until next time, communicate clearly, value your work, and build connections truly that support your life. Andrew, thank you again for coming on the podcast. You were a wonderful guest.
Thank you, Michael. It was a pleasure to be here.
Well, hold on, folks. Don't go anywhere. Let's hear from our sponsors. David Neal, co founder, Revved Up Kids. Revved Up Kids is on a mission to protect children and teens from sexual abuse, exploitation, and trafficking. They provide prevention training programs for children, teens, and adults. To learn more, go to revvedupkids.org. Henry Kaplan, Century 21. When it comes to making the biggest financial decision of your life, leave it in the hands of a proven professional, Henry Kaplan. Henry is a global real estate agent with Century 21, celebrating his 41st year in business. No matter where you're moving, Henry has the right connections for you. You can contact Henry at 561 427 4888. A huge thank you to our guest for sharing such incredible insights today. And of course, a big shout out to you, our amazing listeners, for tuning in and spending your time with us. If you're interested in my digital courses, being coached, or having me come and talk to your company, just go to Michael and fill out the request form. Remember, networking isn't about being perfect, it's about being present. So take what you've learned today, get out there, and make some meaningful connections. If you've enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with someone who could use a little networking inspiration. Let's keep the conversation going. You can find me on Apple, Spotify, Pandora, YouTube, or my website, forman.com/podcasts.